My name is Jessica Lauer, and I am a sexual assault survivor. A lot of the reason that I agreed to this interview is because I feel like we don't tell enough stories about abuse or sexual assault. I feel like it's not something that is thought about very often, that people talk about. So for the purpose of this interview, I'm going to refer as the male in the story as Chuck, just to keep his identity private and keep my life a little more private. I've known him for about 4 years. We met when we were freshmen in college, and we were pretty good friends up until this past year. It wasn't even a relationship. It only lasted for about a month, if not less. And it was purely, I never saw him. We never spent any time together outside of his house or his bedroom. A part of me, looking back, a part of me knew that. I knew that all he wanted was something that, I wasn't willing to give to him. But at the same time, there were things I gave him because I felt like if I did, then he would date me, which sadly, that was not the case. The night of the assault, it was, again, very late. It was midnight, 1 in the morning. He asked me to come over, and at first it was casual. Even though it was so late at night, I went over and I was doing homework with him, and he kept saying a lot of manipulative things to me, like he wanted me to make the first move, which I didn't really know what that meant. Obviously I'd been seeing him, so I wasn't really sure what was going to happen that night. I was kind of hoping we were just going to hang out with each other and nothing else was going to happen, even though it was late at night. But he kept wanting me to make the first move and start things up between him and I wasn't feeling it that night. And I was in a place where I just really wasn't happy with my relationship with him and what was going on between us. And eventually he got tired of waiting, and he had a couple of beers. However, knowing him, that didn't affect him. I knew he wasn't drunk, but he did eventually make a move on me, and for some reason I just let it happen. It all happened really fast. Next thing I knew, I was pinned to his bed, and he essentially was trying to force himself upon me, to put it lightly. And I did not give any consent. I never said, yes, let's do this. It was always, no, stop, don't. I never gave consent. And looking back on it now, I remember in the moment, at one point I was looking up at the ceiling thinking, oh my gosh, is this sexual assault? Because I'm not telling him yes, and yet he's still trying. And I told him to stop several times, and the first couple of times he did, but it was only briefly, it was never for very long. And then he would try again, and I would tell him to stop again, and it got to the point where I didn't know what else to do. I was pinned to the bed, I couldn't move, and I was terrified. I was really scared. And it wasn't really anything that I could do other than, because I'm not a forceful person. I didn't want to push him off of me. I didn't want to hit him, even though I knew it would be in protection of myself. I just wasn't really sure what to do. And eventually I was able to somehow move myself from beneath him and get him off of me. I remember getting up out of his bed and putting some of my clothes back on, and I guess not really sure what to do at that point. He was really tired at that point because he had been working so hard, and I ended up staying the night there, which I very much regret. It was a mistake. I should have left. And after that, I spent the night. The next morning, he and I got up, and he had class, and I just kind of sat in his room, and he went and took a shower, and I sat in his room and waited. And once he came back, I could see that he felt guilty about what had happened between us, or he was just putting on a show. I'm not really sure which it was at this point in time, knowing who he is now. He did come, when he came out of the shower, he was dressed and ready for class, and he grabbed me and pulled me into a hug and told me repeatedly how sorry he was. However, he's done that before in the past. Whenever something has happened between us, he's always felt guilty about it, and therefore made me feel guilty about it, when 90% of the time I felt he was the one that initiated everything that happened between us. So in the end, I always felt like the bad guy because I let it happen after he felt so guilty. And after that, he apologized for a few minutes and hugged me, and then he turned really cold, just unfeeling, no emotion there, uncaring. And I remember walking outside with him and saying goodbye to him, and he said goodbye and turned away and didn't give me another glance and left me outside of the front of his house, as he biked to class. And I went home that day feeling, it's kind of hard to describe what I felt. It was lousy. Even though he and I had not actually had intercourse, I was scared that I was pregnant because I didn't know what that felt like. I was very scared is all I really have to say about it. And I tried to get in contact with him. I tried to talk to him. That whole week he ignored me and avoided me, and didn't want to look my way. And I don't know if that was because he felt guilty or if he just wanted to avoid the situation altogether. Either way, it tore me apart, mostly because I didn't know what I had done wrong, and I wanted to fix what was going on between us. I didn't know what was going on with me. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I cried all the time. And I wondered if it was just because it kind of felt like a breakup, even though we hadn't actually been dating. I didn't really know what was going on with me, and I eventually told one of my best guy friends about it, and he was straight up with me and told me that I had been assaulted. And I didn't believe him, even though the thought had crossed my mind. I didn't believe him at first, and I kind of shrugged it off. And it wasn't until later that I went and saw someone professional about it, and they reaffirmed that that was what it was. I told her the whole story in detail. And that really rocked my world. I already wasn't in a good place, and that really put me in a really dark place. And I would have to say it was probably my worst semester of school. I don't think I did nearly as well as I could have. I was very distracted. Chuck was in 2 of my classes, so I saw him every single day, and that was, it's indescribable. It was so hard for me to be around him, but it was things that I love. The classes that we were in together were things that I also loved, and I wasn't willing to give up because he, was there. And although it tortured me all semester and I had a really hard time with it, I managed to get through it somehow. I ended up writing him a letter and giving it to him. And in the letter, I specifically told him that I could have reported him for what he had done to me, but I chose not to because I would never wish those consequences upon him. I would never wish for him to go through that, no matter the pain that I had been through. even though I wrote that and told him that I wasn't going to turn him in, I wasn't going to do anything else, that I just wanted him to know, he still became very scared, and he made that very known to me. He kept wanting me to sit down with him and reconcile the situation and figure things out, and knowing him, I knew that if I were to sit down and have a conversation with him about it, he would just be like, okay, it's done, it's over with. You know, I did what I did, and now you have to forgive me, and it's time to move on. You know, he would just kind of throw it away, and that's not how it works. You know, sexual assault, any sort of abuse that anyone goes through with another individual, that stays with them. It stays with them for a long time, if not the rest of their lives. It's something that they're going to remember in their next relationship, or if it was an abusive friend, in their next friendships. You know, it's something that stays with you, and it's terrifying because you don't feel like you can trust anyone again. Now, as of moving forward from that, granted, you know, even though I am still scared of him, I have come such a long way from when the incident happened. Like I said, I sought help for a while, for months actually. It's been about a month now, a month and a half since I've seen him, since I've been in school with him, and it's a breath of fresh air to put it, you know, in a good way. I'm a lot happier than I was, and it still affects me though. I have nightmares about it. I think about it, and I get scared to see him still. A lot of that just has to do with the healing and the moving forward, and I know I'm going to be able to do that. Anyone out there who has been through sexual assault, any sort of abuse, if you're remaining silent right now, I encourage you to speak up, to tell someone. I cannot tell you how incredible it feels to talk about it. Holding it in for the rest of your life is going to be so painful. And if you just let it go and talk to someone, it's going to help you move forward a great deal.